So here we are. We're going to talk a little bit about working with publishers. And as I said, this process it's different, obviously, with each and every publisher, with each and every art director, with each and every AD, I said art director, editor is the word that I'm looking for. So we're going to start with the first experience, which is the Incredible Rockhead graphic novel series, written by Scott Nickel. A lot of fun, and published by Stone Arch Books. So you get this phone call, or maybe it's an email, and they say, we've got this, we saw your portfolio, we saw your website, we love your work, and we want you to draw this for us. But you say yes, if you're me, or yeah, why not? So then the next step, after you've moved through all the red tape, maybe you've done some sketches. Now, one of the things I do want to say is that I don't work on spec. Some people do. That means, hey, submit these drawings to us, and if we like them, we'll give you the project and pay you. If not, you don't get anything. I personally, you got to pay me. I've been doing this long enough, and I think with most publishers, the real ones, they're gonna pay you for your time. So after you've moved through that process, you've got the project, you get the descriptions for the characters. And again, that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is characters. So here are my character descriptions. And the wonderful thing that Stone Arch did, as well as the AD, they give us a lot of information about who these characters are. And these are graphic novels. Why does it matter? Why do I need to know this information past, well, we'll talk about that in a second. So let's just read this. I'm sure you already have. Chip Stone, an extremely skinny, pasty, and fragile 13-year-old boy, Irish in heritage. Chip should have bright red hair and freckles, think Opie Taylor from the Andy Griffith Show, and wear normal, everyday clothes. Nothing too showy or nerdy, just average. And so that's Chip, and then he turns into the Incredible Rockhead, Chip Stone's alter ego. When Chip Stone transforms into Rockhead, his head, of course, turns into a giant rock. Of course. It should be extremely oversized and too big for his body, which doesn't change form. It should look like stone or crackled concrete, almost like the Thing of Paul Chadwick's concrete character, or Marvel's The Thing. The rest of Chip's body doesn't change except for turning into the color of stone. So this is what you're going to get from your publisher. And what he's doing here, notice several things that he's doing. Number one, he's calling out cultural references that I understand and know. Think Opie Taylor from the Andy Griffith Show. Think Paul Chadwick's concrete character, or Marvel's The Thing. So he's already given me a baseline of kind of expanding that reference and understanding who that character is. So we'll move on to the next page, which goes on to describe the characters. Spencer Canado, Canado, you say Canado, I say Canado. It's probably correctly Canado. Chip's best friend. Spencer is a 13-year-old Hispanic boy. He is chubby, although he wears it well. He has certain feminine tendencies, such as dressing nicely. He even dresses up for school, wearing khakis, button-up shirts, Argo sweaters, and maybe even a tie. Of course, he is ridiculed for his efforts. Then there's Troy Perkins, the bully. Troy is a 15-year-old Caucasian boy. He has been held back a few grades. He looks like an out-of-date frat boy, a tuft of blonde hair sticking out of his backward trucker hat, white high-top shoes, cargo pants, and a mesh football jersey. What a jerk, right? I'm sorry. And then there's Jennifer Jones, Chip's love interest, a 13-year-old African-American girl. She is the queen of the school, I think Lisa from Saved by the Bell, and is always followed around by a pack of wannabe friends. So what we have here really are, again, kind of archetypical characters. The bully, the best friend, and then I want to take a moment and notice Jennifer's description. It is the shortest description of all. And we'll see how that affects her character development. So he's given us a lot of meat. Give me a lot of meat. He just told me what these characters look like, but he's also kind of given me he's giving me those character traits. Now, this is a graphic novel, so we're going to see pages and pages of these guys moving around, and he's helping define that movement for me. So we move to the next page. This is what I saw in my head. after reading that text, I saw these two guys. Now, so like I said, that's what I saw in my head. And I sent these over to the art director, and he gave me some feedback. So he says, Chip is too young. He needs to be drastically different from Spence. He needs a skinnier head, total pencil neck. And then he goes on to tell me more about this character. Borderline repulsive. That will make his transformation into Rockhead that much more humorous. But he does like his hair, his nose, and his freckles. And from this moment on, that is Chip's face. That's his nose. Those are his freckles. Those are his eyes. I mean, the structure of Chip's face stays the same. And moving on to Spencer. So he likes Spencer. He likes the short sleeve button down with the tie under the sweater vest. He wants more of a current trendy hairdo. Contrast the geeky hair and features of Chip. Even though Spencer is inherently geeky himself, he tries to cover it up with his uncharacteristic fashion sense. Hair should be groomed too immaculately. So again, he's giving me, and you see the ellipsis. I'm taking out information that he's giving me. He's giving me very deep insight into who these characters are, building a picture on the inside. And I really also noticed how he's doing for me what I hadn't really done in this illustration. He's contrasting the two. So not only are they contrasted in sort of their personality types, but they are contrasted even more in the way they look. So, and then he gave me a photo reference for Spencer's hair, just in case I didn't get it. And this apparently was a local news person where he's from, and which I have cropped to protect the innocent. Not that you wouldn't be innocent with that haircut. I'm jealous. I am. So good on you for having awesome hair. Use it responsibly, folks. You don't know how long you'll have it. So whenever I get those notes back from the editor or the art director, I stop and say, okay, what are my takeaways? What did I learn? What are they really saying to me? So I do that process, and where there's even like printing out the email, underlining those things, and then just kind of let it percolate in my head. And I do want to return back to this point. Feedback is not personal. What he's doing, he hasn't told me anything that hurt my feelings. What he did is he helped me determine, okay, what these characters look like. This is who they should be. I didn't nail it. I didn't nail it in the first drawing, but you rarely are going to nail it in the first drawing. So, the feelings, brush those off your shoulder and move on. So here's round two. Applying those things that he told me. Chip needs to be more of a pencil neck. He needs to be more geeky. We did that. Here's Spence. As you can see, we've given him the haircut. Spence doesn't change radically. I just made him a little bit older, and I end up going with the secondary Spence right here in the background, because in my head, Spence is he's a sweet guy. He's a nice guy. This guy looks a little piggish. I mean, he literally looks piggish with the way that his face is constructed. So we move on, and here's Jennifer Jones, and she pretty much follows his strokes. She looks like the girl from Saved by the Bell. There we go. And then here's Troy. I mean, this kid picked on me in junior high. I knew this kid. I mean, this is not a caricature of him. So, I don't want any gripes or anything. I'm sure he looks totally different now because we were like 13. Anyway, to move on. And so here is the first stab at Rockhead. And again, this kind of bolder head. Spending some time calling out the eyebrows where they actually are kind of three-dimensional elements that are made out of rock. Again, he's got that great, one of my favorite gags in this comic book is the fact that he's got this giant boulder head and then like a skinny little guy body, which would never be able to support his giant rock head. That's a fantastic joke, but it's a visual one. So then, spent some time at the drawing table, went away, and I've had a varied career. I've done newspaper and magazine illustrations as well. I work really, really fast. So people call me and ask me to turn around something. I can generally do that. And I can always do that. But it's nice to just kind of sit and let your brain do percolating. So So I've spent some time in my studio drawing those, and so but I'm not satisfied. So here's more Chip development. And really just playing here with the shapes and forms that make up Chip's face. As you can see, kind of increasing the brow area, bringing the mouth up and down, bringing those lines in. And also notice that I'm playing with the way Chip stands. I understand that he does not, I haven't seen the script yet, so I don't really know who Chip is but from the script. But here I've determined, okay, this is the way Chip stands, this is who he is. And the guy in the middle ends up being kind of Chip's, that's who he is. Anyway, don't move on. And here's another shot of Jennifer Jones. And what I did with her was I softened her up here. It felt like she's a little too pointy. So she's been softened up. And then an approach to Rockhead. The thing about that earlier drawing, it was boulderish. It was almost kind of early Hulk. So Marvel's the Hulk. Hulk, question mark, copyright, restricted, et cetera, et cetera. And bringing in, again, kind of those boulder shapes. But as I said before, also notice Chip's face is there. The guy that is here is also here. So, and that's one of the primary elements of that earlier drawing. He wasn't there. Where's Chip? So here's our feedback. He says of Chip, the redheaded kid, nailed him with the original sketch. He says, tighten up that turtleneck. The neck itself is a bit too baggy, like a woman's sweater. Oh, okay, he's not wearing a woman's sweater, I guess. Decrease the size of his ear, although I would like to keep it sticking out. He likes the slouch. His posture, again, the characters. Spence, he says, dead on perfect. Nailed him. And I felt the same way. Then Jennifer Jones, he says, cute face, good proportions, snootier, but not a mean girl. She's popular and she kind of knows it. Revisit her clothing and style. And then he gives me this long paragraph telling me who she is. And if you'll notice, I had plenty of information who Chip was. I had plenty of information who Spencer was. They helped me define who these characters are. But with Jennifer, I don't really know. She's just kind of this archetypal, pretty, smart girl. Well, not pretty girl, smart girl, but popular girl. Not that those two things don't go together. They do. But so he now goes into telling me who Jennifer is. And this is most of this information, we're not going to use it in the graphic novel. These storylines are pretty basic, pretty clean, pretty to the point. But for me, as the designer, as the character designer, if I know who these people are, then I can draw them. Troy, he says, yep, this is pretty much who I dealt with in high school. So then he goes in to talk about Rockhead. Feels more like a rock. I also like the fact he still maintains some of the original facial features of Chip, which I feel is important. I also found this important. He wants to make it larger, not too much, but just make it a bit wider and a bit taller on the forehead. He likes the cracks. He wants a couple of sprigs of Chip's red hair protruding from one of the cracks rather than sitting on top of his head. As you proceed to color, you'll need to pay special attention to the modeling of the rock head so it doesn't come out flat. I'm not too worried about it, though. Okay, so here is Chip. This is pretty much the Chip that the rest of the book is modeled on. I do want to take a moment to comment on Chip's striped shirt. Chip's striped shirt probably added 30 to 40 hours to the project because of having to fill in all the color. And that's something you think about as you're in production mode. I illustrated all of these myself. I did have somebody lay in flat color, and then I went in and finessed it. When I say flat colors, they just filled the color blocks. But that does mean that, again, I have to deal with that red and yellow shirt. And that's something to think about as you're moving forward in time. When you're designing a character, especially if you're drawing him over and over and over again, what are those elements going to, what kind of time is it going to add to your book? If you're doing a picture book, 32 pages, and he's only going to show up once per page, that's all right. If you're drawing a graphic novel, I mean, I loved this shirt, but I knew it was going to take me a lot when we approved it. Here's Spence in color. And again, you can see these guys are complements of each other. Where Chip is bright and yellow and red, Spencer is gray and blue. So they are visual complements of each other, tall, short, round, thin. And then here's Jennifer. And that's what she should look like. That's who she is. But until he'd given me that information of who Jennifer was, I couldn't picture her. I couldn't find the nuances. and who she was. And here's Troy, which pretty much, from the first drawing remains unchanged, and he's not happy. He's going to create some trouble. And the Rockhead. So again, giant, ridiculous boulder, skinny junior high kid body. Originally, he told me to make his hands gray. I kept him flesh tone because I kind of like the joke that carries. All right, so here's a couple of pages from, this is a transformation page where Chip has been injected with a serum that turns him into a crazy giant rock-haired guy. So there's that. And then here's a later in the book when they're in a zoo, because it goes down in a zoo. There's trouble at the zoo. And I really enjoyed, I included these pages because it has one of my favorite gags from the book, which is that Spencer keeps knocking Chip over in that third panel down on the bottom left. He's like, hey, buddy, and he slaps him. And, of course, Chip's head is giant and heavy, and so he falls down. So this happens like 2 or 3 times in this novel, and it's fantastic. So, and then this being a 4-book set originally, now, like I said, it's collected in one giant graphic novel. We had other villains that we had to deal with. We had Dozer, the scary Dozer-handed guy. And then wonderful, I love this character so much. This girl who turns into a snow monster. And then the general, who is our major antagonist. Here you see the different forms of paper cut. He's great. He folds himself up into an airplane. He folds himself up into a paper football at one point in time. Here's another antagonist. And then these two right here, the backpack and the girl with the paintbrush arms, they weren't in the script, but the backpack kid was. But these are, what happens is these kids take this serum and then they become school supplies, essentially. All right. And so, the girl with the paintbrush arms, she represents, my peeps, my artist peeps. What? Anyway, okay. So there's some of the villains, and here's again a couple of spreads from the graphic novel. If you want to see more of this, it's on my website at csjennings.com. That first series again, where we see the kids interacting with each other, and I think about kind of a graphic novel workshop that we had this weekend, Mark. And the brilliant Dave Roman, who was talking about, if you're looking at a graphic novel, you should still be able to tell what's happening when you take the words away. Now, what we get here is essentially just that she's upset about something and afraid. But I feel like this page pulls that off. Thank you, Dave Roman. Anyway. And so here's some panels. They're just my favorite panels. It's this backpack who ends up on Spencer's head after he's become the spectacular scissor legs. The general, giant breaking in, and again, our abominable snow girl, who I adore.